I've been thinking about doing an episode on today's topic for some time, and then lo and behold, I'm sitting in our kitchen with a friend and the same theme arises. So today I'd like to talk about the power of cross-skilling. Welcome to the Henny Flynn podcast, the space for deepening self-awareness with profound self-compassion. I'm Henny. I write, coach and speak about how exploring our inner world can transform how we experience our outer world, all founded on a bedrock of self-love. Settle in and listen and see where the episode takes you. Sounds a little bit corporate. It would be, I'll come on to this actually in a bit, but my sense is that we can use skills that we have at home or that we've learnt in our place of home when we're in the workplace and vice versa. So, for example, maybe we're good at facing into difficult conversations at work, but we find it really hard or think that we find it impossible when we're at home. This example is something that I often come across with clients. And actually, my sense is that we can almost make work become like a playground at times, a place to really practice the skills that might be what we need to navigate potentially challenging situations at home. So even if we haven't yet mastered that skill that we need in a difficult situation we're navigating in our family life, for example, we might be able to see opportunities in the workplace where we could gently, consciously, wisely explore how we might build those skills in a really safe environment, if work feels like a safe environment for you, in order to then be able to pick those skills up and apply them at home. Vice versa, there may be things that we're really good at managing in our family life. Maybe there are complicated relationships with people in our family system. We all have those. My experience is many of us have those, no assumptions. But at the same time, we might find that there are some people at work that for us feel really, really hard to deal with. So even though we might be the person in our family system that everyone relies on to pour oil on troubled waters, when we're at work, we kind of forget that. And actually, we just have a bit of a brick wall about how to work with person X. Maybe something is coming up for you as I say these things. Maybe there's something where you've seen a parallel between two situations, something at work, something at home, maybe now, maybe in the past. Or maybe you've handled something really well in the past that could possibly help you handle something that's happening right now. Just kind of opening up and letting these ideas sort of filter in and see, does it resonate with you? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I grew up as the youngest in a big, loud, and at times quite complicated family system. And I recognize that those experiences that I gathered and learnt of being the peacemaker, the trouble easer, they helped me manage mercurial leaders, potentially volatile groups, working groups when we were leading big change programs, or troubled team members, those experiences that I gathered to me in my family system, they help me in the workplace. And some of those are, sometimes that's really obvious, of course it did. I'm just going to put a little bit in brackets in here, which is, also some of those skills, for example, that I learned in my family system about maybe a bit of people pleasing or suppressing my own needs in favor of keeping the peace, those kind of things. It's not about picking those up unconsciously and applying them. This is about bringing our conscious awareness to the stuff that we have skillfully gathered to us, rather than the unconscious application of old strategies that we might have learned that have kept us safe. And there's a little bit of grey going on here, and as with so many of these topics that I bring into this place, there is nuance. And so really the invitation is to feel into what that nuance might look like for you. Okay, I'm going to close brackets and let you go back to the episode. But other times we might have a almost like a kind of invisible line separating something that we experienced or something that we're good at in one place from kind of filtering through to another aspect of our life. Another sort of example of this that might resonate with you is, so let's imagine that I have a client. This is actually an amalgam of a number of clients in order that no one person is identified here. But let's imagine that this is one client who felt that they were really no good at admin. They had this story about themselves that they were, sorry, just hiccuped. They have this story about themselves that they're no good at financial or practical details. They'd often put themselves down if these kinds of themes came up. And, it was something that they felt that they really wanted to work on in order to be able to support more in other aspects of their family life. But then when we looked more widely, they also helped run a local sports team, amateur, sports team, kids team. And what they recognised was that they were actually really good at doing admin there. And they were often the one who had a handle on all of the details, who understood what was going on with the finances. And with this particular person, partly that was because they were really interested in providing that support. It really gave them a sense of purpose. They really loved being part of the team. They got reward for knowing these things. Whereas in the other part of their life where they felt that they didn't have, any skills at it and they, weren't any good at it, they just got criticism either from themselves or from others. And so their motivation for applying these cross skills was fairly limited, to be honest. So understanding where their motivations lay and recognizing that they actually did have these skills was so useful, because they were able to then pick up the stuff that was really helpful for them to make the changes in the way that they motivated themselves for the aspect of their life where they wanted to be able to apply these skills in a different way. And my feeling is that when we look at this kind of this sort of work around cross-skilling, it's often where we're most oblivious to the skills that we have. In the workplace, we might just accept that we're good at dealing with complicated leadership teams or something like that. We might not really recognize that actually that is a skill. It's just like, well, it's just me. I can just do that. And so because we're oblivious to it, we might not recognize all of the nuances that go on that enable us to be able to manage, the different layers that are that show up when we're in a situation with someone who someone else might find complicated. We don't necessarily recognize the layers of skill that are in there, from listening deeply, from empathy, clarity of speech, all of these things are all really important. When we're oblivious to them, we don't know how to access them consciously. And so by developing our conscious awareness, we can then go, oh, actually, I'm good at this. I can pick this up and I can use it somewhere else. And that might be incredibly powerful. And so that's why, this is useful. It feels, I feel like I've kind of dived straight into this today. But hopefully there's something here that resonates with you. And so we might feel that we have a place in our life where we're stuck, or we just can't move forward because we believe we don't have the right skill to do that. So, or it might be that we just find ourselves constantly overthinking, are constantly looking at all the different variables around a problem that we're trying to solve. And kind of feel as though, well, I can't stop doing that because that's just what I'm like. Whereas in another part of our life, we might have developed the skill of being able to say, okay, well, this feels tricky, but let's just let it play out. Let's just see what happens next, and then we can work out what our next step is. So we're able to shift from believing ourselves to be an overthinker, a kind of constant, worrying at something, into being someone who is able to pause and let something flow, surrender into something. And what this sort of means is that when we can recognize this, we might see that actually we do have all of the requisite skills to change the thing that maybe we believe we can't change. We just might need to put them into place in a slightly different way. Or that Andre Previn joke from, was it Morecambe and Wise? I'm playing all the right notes, just not necessarily in the right order. We can take all of the requisite skills and we can put them into a different order and create a completely different piece of music. So a sort of slight tributary of this thought stream is that when I was doing consulting as part of my old corporate life, each new role that I went into, and I didn't consult in hundreds of different businesses. I tended to stay in a place for quite a long project, and then I'd move on to somewhere else. But I used to think about it like switching on my ant brain. That was the phrase that I had, which is a little bit different from the concept of the hive mind, if that's something that you've come across, which I think is a little bit more like the Borg in Star Trek. And if that cultural reference passes you by, then think about a single swarm of bees all acting in unison. That's the hive mind. Or it can show up as collective intelligence emerging from online communities, where you get this kind of zeitgeist happening of, everyone thinking the same thing simultaneously. That's the sort of hive mind. And then that makes me think about groupthink, and I could go down a sort of rabbit warren about that, but just very, very quickly, how this relates to groupthink, which is a psychological phenomenon where a group strives for consensus at the expense of critical thinking and sound decision making. And what happens when we slip into groupthink is that often we end up suppressing dissenting opinions. So if I'm slipping into groupthink, I'll agree with someone in the role of leader because I think everyone else agrees with them, even though they might all be doing the same thing, and we all secretly doubt that leader's abilities. We suppress that doubt in favour of conforming with the group. And so that's groupthink. And hive mind can be a little bit like that, but it is slightly different. But for me, my ant brain is different again. The sense I had of my ant brain was that with each new role, I would somehow consciously tap into what I intuitively felt was important in different parts of the organisation. So it was a bit like, I'd kind of come into the job, make connections with people, start listening deeply. And it was a bit like I kind of opened myself up to the system that I was in. And I strongly suspect that I am not by any means the first person to have noticed this. And if you have, or if you know someone who's written about it, I'd really love to hear from you, because I'm really fascinated in this ability that I think many of us have, all very possibly. And so the ant brain enabled me to access different parts of me, as well as different parts of the organisation. So I was able to pick up on data that was happening around me, little cues, words, phrases, body language, the whole thing. I was able to sort of bring a kind of conscious awareness to all of these different bits of data, which we often just absorb unconsciously, of course, because that's, it's part of how we stay alive as humans, is this ability to pick up on all the data that's going on and filter out what isn't useful and let in what is useful. And so as I was able to access all of these external bits of data, I was also able to access internal bits of data, so different memories, learnings, knowledge, skills, and seek and filter through what would most support me in my new role. So as a consultant, of course, it's vital that you hit the ground running. You're constantly reading each situation. This applies to any place, to be honest, going into the school playground, your child's first day of school, or going into any new job or any kind of social setting. We're constantly reading each situation to glean and to gather as much useful data as you can in order to provide, in my case as a consultant, in order to provide the maximum benefit from the time that I had with that organisation. And like I said before, I think we all have this capacity. It's just that thinking in this way can be utterly exhausting, of course, because we're on high alert. I loved some aspects of doing that work because I really enjoyed the high alertness at times. It's a little bit addictive, that adrenaline and cortisol, and Also, the dopamine hits that you get from getting things right, reading the data right, being interconnected. You know, but it's also exhausting, and it's one of the reasons why so many people experience a form of burnout, of one kind or another. And I found that after I left that world, that I would hear myself, say things like, I never want to work in the corporate space again. But when we shut down, and this is the point of that very long explanation, but when we shut down whole parts of our past, or even completely segment work life from our home or social life, my premise, my observation is that we may risk missing out on things that could really support us. This idea of being able to cross skill across different parts of our lives. Now, of course, it doesn't mean leaving, all aspects of our life completely blended. We also need boundaries. They are so important. And if you're curious about boundaries, then take a look at my short course on boundaries. I've gathered together all of the podcast episodes that I've done on boundaries and pulled them together into a short 5-day course. It's completely free. You can access it. I'll put a link into the show notes for you. So we need to have these boundaries. We don't want to be completely blended, because actually that can leave us feeling, really exhausted, because, we need the boundaries in order to create space that is ours and not just, merged into the external. We need to be able to have this internal space for us too, and, time for us too. So for me, this ability to cross skill, it means bringing some conscious awareness to the skills that could potentially support us elsewhere in our life. And learning this has helped me enormously. And, maybe something in what I'm talking about today is resonating with you. Maybe there's a recognition of something that has helped you, or maybe there's something sparking where you're going, hang on a minute. Maybe I do have some of the skills to resolve this issue I'm facing into if I look more widely across my life, rather than that slightly kind of myopic thing, that short-sighted thing that can often happen to us because we're human, where a problem looms so large in our field of vision that we forget that there's anything else around that we could look at and maybe learn from. So for me, I finally had the realization one day, on this point around I never want to work in the corporate world again. Who better to help exhausted executives with managing the risks and realities of burnout than someone who had been there, someone who had almost died because of their unwillingness or, let's stay with that, to recognize the risks. And someone who'd not only survived that process, but actually thrived in the choices that she then made. And obviously that someone is me, in case that wasn't clear. And, so now I work with many executive clients. I don't really see any distinction between the path that any client comes to me. But many of those people are executive clients. as in they're working in corporate environments. And I even teach coaching skills to leaders in the corporate environment. And choosing to do this work involves switching on different parts of my brain. It involves cross-skilling from old skill sets that I had into new challenges, new opportunities that I'm facing. And my reflection is that it can feel a bit like opening up some back rooms that haven't been occupied for a while, giving them an airing, a dusting, bit of a polish, before then kind of realizing, oh, they're actually lovely spaces, these can be quite nice to hang about in. But until then, we might have just kind of had the door shut and just gone, oh no, nobody goes in there. There's no point. And in each of these back rooms, there might be some really useful things. I mean, there might be things that you're not interested in anymore, but there might be some really useful things, skills, knowledge, experiences that can potentially be applied in other parts of our lives. There might also be some memories that we're just like, okay, I'm leaving that one there. Like, that's okay. We don't need to spend a lot of time sitting with that, or old grudges, or maybe there's some stuff there that actually does really need tending to. That's a completely different podcast episode. But, maybe there are things in there that would be really useful to, apply to other parts of your life. And this kind of awareness of this ability that we all have to cross skill, it's also really helped me with creating the courses, creating the group coaching that I now offer, creating experiences like a piece of quiet. And if you don't yet know what that is, it's new and it's wonderful. And I'll share a little bit more about it at the end. And over the years, I've often heard parts of me say, I don't know how to do something. But what they actually mean, or what I actually mean in that situation, is that I haven't yet done exactly that thing in exactly those conditions for exactly that audience, etc., etc. But when we remember that we're able to mine our own mind, our own life experience for the cross skills and cross knowledge and cross references, they don't have to be, it sounds like, it's very angry, but cross skills, cross knowledge, cross references that could really support us, that can then significantly help us overcome the overwhelm of doubt, or that voice of the self-critic, the inner critic that might be telling us that we can't do something. Whereas if we can just create this little bit of space inside and sit back and go, we might not have experience of doing exactly that, but we have been able to do something similar in the past. And it doesn't mean, of course, that there is always something in our past or our present life that relates directly to the thing that we most need right now. But the possibility is that there might be. So maybe it's useful to look. So there we go. They're the thoughts that I threw down on a piece of paper yesterday. This kind of of ideas and thoughts, and then having had the conversation that I had just now in my kitchen with a friend, where the same kind of theme came up. It just felt I wanted to come and record this and share it with you, because maybe there's something here that resonates with you. And if so, I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear from you. And if you've got an experience of the ant brain, then I'd love to hear about that too, if that sparks any thought within you. And yes, that point around boundaries, I'll put a note into the notes for you, so you can sign up for that if you'd like. And then lastly, just to say, oh my goodness me, I've received some beautiful messages about a piece of quiet. We have, we're into our second week now, and these are a weekly pause every Wednesday lunchtime, and there is a reason why it is on a Wednesday, because I think traditionally we often take time out for ourselves at the weekends. That's the kind of very sort of normal classic thing for us to do. It's the reason why we have weekends, is to take a break from work, because we know how important it is for people to rest in order to be productive. We have to have rest. And at the same time, my sense is that we rest at the weekend, and then we fire ourselves back up for the Monday, and we launch ourselves back out into the world, and you don't need me to talk about Sunday night-itis, the feeling of dread that so many of us have about the week ahead, or just kind of, you get to Monday and you just think, oh, I don't even feel like I've had a weekend, those kinds of phrases. And so I'm creating a piece of quiet as a weekly pause every Wednesday lunchtime. It's just 20 minutes, maybe a bit less actually. And if you don't want to do the journaling prompt, which is part of it, then it could literally be 8 or 9 minutes out of your lunchtime on a Wednesday. And you just sit and listen. You can listen to it through your favorite podcast app. It's a private podcast. Or just straight through the link that you'll get emailed each Wednesday. And it is a chance to take a pause, to have a piece of quiet in your week, to center yourself, to reboot, to regroup, to gather yourself. And for me, there's something really beautiful knowing that others are doing it with you. And so it's a short relaxation practice that's then followed by a thoughtfully crafted flow journaling prompt that relates in some way to the relaxation practice that we've just done. If you don't feel like journaling that day, that's fine. Just listen to the prompt and maybe reflect on it. Or not. This is your practice, of course. But if you do feel like writing, then the second half of the recording is a piece of music that gives you a Pavlovian response to picking up your pen and writing. And I play the piece of music for 8 or 9 minutes. And the invitation is you write for that length of time. And when you're finished, you put down your pen, you close your book, and you know that the words have done their work. And this is not about anybody getting anything right, or it even being possible for anybody to get anything wrong. This is simply a space to return home, to return to yourself. And I am so delighted to welcome all the people who've already signed up. And if you would like to join us too, then that would be so beautiful. And there is a link in the show notes for you. And as someone who is part of this community, as a listener to this Henny Flynn podcast, the offer is a 20% reduction in the subscription for you. Just use the link, or you can always message me and I can send you the link. And I would love to welcome you there. I think you'll enjoy it. All right, my darlings, I am going to send you a hug and a wave.